Hi, I'm going to be telling you where I'm at. Oh, hey, by the way, good for a homeless guy. I'm going to buy that with real money because I got some today. So here I go, my $5 Friday, and I'm in my Safeway store, my favorite one. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the murder-suicide series. And just to let you know, I used to build stuff like this for Safeway, and my contracts, probably in the millions, were canceled when I sued Southern Pacific. So that was Bennett versus Southern Pacific. And CEO Steve Bird used to be a Southern Pacific employee in the executive level. And he worked with attorney Richard Stanford Kopp, or Rick Kopp, who took millions from the bin Ladens before 9/11. I'm going to tie a knot today that's going to tell you a lot about 9/11. It's going to tell you a lot about murder-suicides. And you know, I've never had this wine, but if they want to send me a bottle, just send it to the city of Walnut Creek and I'll drink it in front of them. Troublemaker. You ruined my life. You took my children. You blew my truck up. Who is you? Who is they? They always ask me. So I started using you. Them? Who is them? Them, they, you, us, our. They describe all the same people. Except the problem is, oh, this has got to be too good. I don't know this wine either, but you know what? I feel like at times I'm talking to a black box. And the Viognier crowd, the Vino crowd, you know? So, for those that get stuck on the alcohol, I hope one day that you can break your stride and get free. So, one of the things that you probably don't see plump jack wines in here, which I haven't found them yet, is probably because of Lieutenant Governor Newsom's stance on LBGT. I bet you any amount of money they just don't bring it in here on purpose. Now, if I haven't seen it, my apologies. But, and you can come, you know, hey, you know, I like some of these names. Actually, it's amusing sometimes you get the right one. The Velvet Devil. Oh my gosh. Would that be Steve Bird? Savell? The guy that threw me out of this store maybe 3 years ago, said I was stealing. I stole some donuts sitting outside, waiting in a shopping cart, purposely set there by somebody else. And now I realize that they were setting me up. That person works here, and I got a feeling she's been fired. And so that's for Wendy Gutschall, at the head of corporate communications for Safeway, who decided that my call's not worth returning, and that she doesn't seem to care too much that my children have been kidnapped by friends of Steve Bird at Hillside Covenant Church, and that the CEO, Robert Miller, doesn't think it's important, and that Safeway's attorneys did everything, and Albertson's attorneys, by the way, did everything in their power to stall me, which leads to me to go search, and I discovered something else in my universe, which is a company called Cerberus Capital, which contains a former vice president. And I don't care, call the Secret Service on me. I'd love to talk to them in person instead of being hung up on. And those of you that know Mitt Romney, it was my phone call to President Trump's Secret Service detail that ended in my victory. Romney lost his chance to be Secretary of State based on what I told him about the characters in 9/11. Donald Trump was going to be set up, or actually future President Donald Trump, which it turned out to be candidate. And for those of are my New York friends, you know, Coppola is a guy that moved into 417 Park Avenue in the 70s when we lived on the penthouse. And now President Trump's in-laws are trying to buy our building at 417 Park Avenue, New York, New York. Did you know that, Wendy? That I once lived in a penthouse and now I sleep behind a building begging for food because I'm really kind of worn down as a human being. I've actually been treated. You should go read this UK slavery statement, Mr. Miller and Mr. Fink, and you know, and also General Petraeus. You know what that is. And General Petraeus, you're over there at Cerberus Capital. And, you know, Colin Powell's over at Salesforce, and Homeland Security Jay Johnson probably quit working for PG&E, who's in contempt of court based on the letters I sent him. I'm known all over the country. Everybody knows who I am. Anyways, and I have a 9/11 story. I have a story about Building 7 that ties back to a lawsuit called Bennett versus Southern Pacific, which was a brutal loss for me. And as I recalculated using my newer forensic accounting skills that I didn't really have back in the 80s, I realized that I lost millions of dollars. And now Union Pacific is the successor of Southern Pacific. Would you guys mind writing me a check for, say, 10 million? Because that's about how much I think I lost. Actually, I think it's more like 30. I had a viable cabinet shop. The CEO of Union Pacific, I don't have your name with me, but you know, my hand was maimed in connection to this. And so your friends, the money that's in your pocket today, part of it came out of my hand. That's how I feel about it. And that's what Safeway did to me, and that's what Attorney Rick Kopp did to me. K-O-P-F, not Kopp. Kopf, with an F on the end. Like Cynthia Kempf, who's dead. German names, that's interesting, huh? That's a Safeway employee that was a friend of mine that was murdered, brutally murdered by 2 Pittsburgh cops. And likely the outcome of that case was manipulated by District Attorney Mark Peterson, who's already an admitted perjurer. And so basically the admitted perjurer, Mr. Kuhn, Shoot, is there. So now, we all know that Nestle's USA bought Dreyers ice cream. And because I lived in Danville, I knew a lot of Dreyers employees, and I think that one of them was fired in connection to my connection to Southern Pacific. Now, oh shoot, all my invites dropped. I have to redo it. So I didn't know that. That's why nobody's showing up. Okay. Anyways, let me finish this real quick. Bring a friend on. As usual, I never expect to get this carried away. There's nobody on here that's a Safeway person that can see my stuff. But, you know, this is a store that is a DEA scheduled store, that they are certified by the DEA to legally distribute drugs. And I have a situation where I'd like the the DEA to look at what happened here with Jamie Sheets almost 15 years ago. Just after 9/11, by the way. Just after me introducing a virus that dropped networks across the United States called NEMDA. I'm just letting it out because, I can't stand this situation. I've been held in check by cops, DEA. I've been held in check by the FBI. They've had massive opportunities to support me in a big way. And instead of helping the citizen that's helping them, they've left me on the street. And in some cases, I feel like to be killed. I've already been knocked up and put in the hospital. Not knocked up, excuse me, that's not the right word. I've already been knocked around enough times to know. I have easily 100 concussions. It's taken its toll on me. The city of Walnut Creek, they just walk by me and wave. Hi, how you doing, Pete? Well, I'm doing absolutely terrible, but don't worry about that. And you guys, listen, when you're 61, I don't have like mission critical health problems, but it certainly doesn't help a guy 61 years old sleeping on the side of the road. I can't find attorneys, and I can thank the Contra Costa County Bar Association, the founding bar members that give this thing called food from the bar to the homeless. Few people realize that some of the homeless have actually been, the Bar Association is their problem. It's the attorneys that have run a network that's a broad expanding conspiracy to defraud residents of Contra Costa County and Alameda and Northern California, and I'm probably sure that it extends all the way back to this little deal I had with Alston Bird, who hasn't paid me a couple $1,000s for being a witness in their case. Yeah, and at the same time I got evicted right around that. And so Alston Bird seems to have a relationship to it. Ken Salazar, Hillary Clinton's best buddy, he's the one I kept calling at, actually I invited a dead person named Steve Sage. I'm sorry, Steve. Rest in peace, brother. But, and by the way, I'm learning something about these invites. I'm like able to add so many this time around. I don't understand it. Usually it's like 25 or 30, and then all of a sudden it goes to 100. It's puzzling. Oh, my cell phone's burning up the electricity. I'm down to 9%. Can't believe that. Well, I need a new cell phone. Anybody got an extra one? You know, it's okay. I've lost everything. I'm doing this so that they don't kill my kids, that they've already killed family, and that, you know, there are people here that are in the 9/11 truth organizations, and I want you guys to start spreading this little video, because I'm going to open up something that you don't know about. So this is our building 7 discussion in relevant to PG&E, Kinder Morgan, Enron, Southern Pacific Pipeline Partners, and Southern Pacific Transportation Corp. Now, that sounds all like a mouthful of words. Well, it is an alphabet of words, and of companies, alphabets A to Z. And I'm trying to find a quiet place to talk. Now all of a sudden I got some equipment, and I'm also looking for my favorite product called so in essence, this is about Starbucks and how they negotiated a contract between Safeway and Starbucks. Now, those kind of contracts are generally high level. The biggest pals in town usually get together and have the biggest pals dinner, and I don't get those dinners, I get the Safeway. Now, a little stop here at another Nestle. So for those of you that are homeless like me, you probably can go into the Starbucks and take a little bit of this Nescafe. They put $7 billion in Starbucks. And this is a Nestle company. I'm pretty sure my eyes are going bad. And hey there, Jimmy. And here's the thing. You got Nescafe, and it's a Nestle company. I can't read this, so just bear with me. I'm getting blind. It is Nestle USA, Glendale, California. Take that jar with you, put it in your backpack, or put it in a little baggie, or go here and take some Starbucks Vias if you're homeless. You can buy this with your EBT card. And I'm on EBT, funded by the government, because nobody wants to recognize that I've lost millions of dollars, and I don't see a path out. The only path I see is to fight and expose what I know. And I'm going to basically tell you what I know. And today is going to be a little bit about, there's a lot of discussion about Building 7 and the Enron documents that were lost. There's little discussion about a building owned by Larry Silverstein called 120 Broadway, New York, New York. So if you type in Patterson, Teal, and Dennis on the letterhead that you can find scanned in various locations is actually David Leslie Milner and David L. Milner. It's my grandfather. And we were once a wealthy family. My brothers are wealthy because they were able to steal my property with the help of District Attorney Mark Peterson and his cronies that have all been taken offline. I'm seeing them leave and being removed from duty from the police, or in the case of what I know about Contra Costa County and the Kinder Morgan explosion and the $15 million fine. The people that I sued are Bennett versus Southern Pacific, set in stone, filed in October 1987. By 1990, my business was upside down. My contracts with Safeway were canceled. And that's, today now I know what happened, but I didn't know what was going on. I got shot at, people were trying to kill me. My shop was set on fire, not seriously, but there was a guy out there lighting fires. And then in 1991, the Judy Berry bombing happened, and a guy named Frank Doyle Jr. took 14 years for the Daryl Cheney and Judy Berry to win in courtroom, because the federal government's good at stalling. And now those attorneys that did that are co-conspirators in 9/11. Unwitting co-conspirators, but they are co-conspirators. Because by stalling Frank Doyle, case with Frank Doyle Jr., 2 years later, he shows up in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. He lives in San Ramon. I'm pretty sure he's connected to the Doyle family and connected to former deceased attorney Lieutenant Dick Grossman of Walnut Creek Bomb Squad, who was trained by Doyle. And Doyle has a connection to law firm called Doyle, Gold and Grossman, which has Doyle, Grossman and Gold, which has a connection to the Daniel Horowitz murder in terms of the Susan Polk case. It's all there. It's all on the table. And, you know, some of it connects to some Russians out of Ukraine. But those characters are the bomb side of my story, the bomb squad. And I'm an arson victim where my truck, I say, blew up on the freeway. There was some kind of ignition source. That's all the elements of making a potential bomb, because if your truck is on fire full of fuel and it hits another car and they explode, it's kind of like a bomb, because gasoline is considered a Molotov cocktail or a gas bomb. Ooh, boy. Anyways, so Enron. Let's go back to Enron. Enron was created from a company in the California distribution system, and I don't know exactly where that's at, but you can follow the Southern Pacific pipeline maps in the 80s and the 90s to my story, because they created Southern Pacific Pipeline Partners around 1990, about the time that I lost my case when my witness had been murdered. So as far as I'm concerned, everybody that worked at Southern Pacific Pipeline Partners is a witness. And everybody that worked at Southern Pacific in the 1980s is also a witness and a co-conspirator to the murder of a 21-year-old. And that might be Rick Kopp, who now went from Southern Pacific in San Francisco over to Fremont Group. And they owned the building called 199 Fremont Street. And in that building is a guy named George Marcus, who is on the board of directors of Fremont, or FRP, or FR. When you go to the website, you'll see it. Fremont Partners. And Mr. Marcus doesn't know that I actually worked for his Mount Diablo Bank, wrote software for them. And he's friends, and they're on the same board and same connections to Steve Bird. Steve Bird knows a guy named Paul Hazen, because they're over at Black Hawk Networks. And Darian Sable, who served his country, committed suicide while working for Wells Fargo Bank. So nobody knows what's going on, right? I do. So that was in 2000, by the way, the Sable suicide. But back to Enron. So Southern Pacific Pipeline Partners created out of the assets of Southern Pacific Transportation Corp., which is the holding company for the people I sued, Bennett's versus Southern Pacific. Gets really confusing. And then if anybody knows George Anschutz of Coachella, he's one of the people that was one of the holders of the stock, significant shareholder. That probably brings in a guy named Warren Buffett. Sorry, Warren, but I don't believe you anymore. I don't believe any of you guys anymore. Bill Gates invested in Calera Capital, and those are the same people that were created out of Fremont Group, and Fremont Group was created out of the assets of Bechtel Real Estate and Investment, and the real estate assets of Southern Pacific, where I lost millions. That's where it is today. And Mr. Gates invested money into Calera, and they used the money at Calera to wreck my life. I've been going through this for 30 years. It took a lot of work to line up everybody, but I hammered all the pieces together. I got a little tin, and I went, bop, 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 and I went, oh my gosh, bop, 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 you know? And I have no ill will towards Starbucks. If there's anything I'm grateful for this year, being homeless, is having some place to stay that's warm, you know, at 9 o'clock at night, instead of freeze my tail off like I have for the last 3 or 4 years. Everything I'm doing here and everything I'm saying is to protect my sons from these actors killing them. I don't care what they tell me. I don't care what kind of insurances they give me. I need to get my sons to a safe place and teach them, you know, how to identify mobsters with money that wear Mormon cloth, because that's what some of these guys are. There's a direct path to my argument to Mitt Romney, and Mitt Romney took millions of dollars from a guy named Rick Kopp. You can find all that on Follow the Money kind of sites, or Political. And then from there, you know, you can follow Romney to him and his history with Otis Air Force Base and Donald Rumsfeld. Oh, we're not going to close that. We're fighting Donald Rumsfeld. It was a bunch of baloney, everybody. Everything that you read about or see or understand about BRAC leads back to the money that I'm talking about today. That's where Bill Gates' money is going. And people have been killed in connection to BRAC. It's one of the most poisonous pits you've ever seen. BRAC is base realignment and closure excuse me, and it resulted in the murder, suicide, or suicide of a city attorney, Mark Kuhn, and I got proof I was talking to him. I got the emails. So I'm in here at Safeway, and right up the street, or right down the street south of me, about a mile, is Kinder Morgan's asset, known as the Kinder Morgan line. There's a line number for it. Runs along the locally known Iron Horse Trail. I've emailed Kinder Morgan. I emailed them, and then somebody put a bullet through my friend's tire and almost killed him. And he was driving a car belonging to an SEC federal agent. He almost got killed. The bullet went through the tire. And then I called the Oregon Highway Patrol. It's milepost 131 in Roseburg northbound. And I'll just give you the, well, you know, he's going to die anyway. Pretty soon. He's pretty sick. So his name's Don Watts. And I don't care what I say no more. Don seems to have something to do with some of the weird stuff that happened. His girlfriend, by the way, been left paralyzed because their car flipped over. And I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time turning it. Hold on. There you go. I have a hard time with them too. No, it wants to go that direction. Okay. I'm broadcasting live around the world. Oh. But you didn't get in there. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. There you go. Nobody wants to know. They just want to get their food. It's a shame. Anyways, when I grow up, I want to be a dried, seedless raisin. It's a joke. I'll never grow up. My own self-deprecation and humility that's been earned the hard way is why I'm still here. So, back to Southern Pacific Pipeline Partners. About a 1990 divestiture plan went into place, and they had to, call in. And this is what you want to do if you want to follow this, the plat maps had to be updated, the county assessors had to be updated, all those people involved in this had to be updated. And the one thing about Southern Pacific that I know is they put the pipeline in the ground in 1956. And that high pressure line, pressurized at a PSI of 1200, blew up when a tractor hit it here in Walnut Creek. And by then it was owned by Kinder Morgan, but its life was Southern Pacific from 1956 to 1990, then Southern Pacific Pipeline Partners from 1990 to 1993, 94, and then they made a whopping clobbering amount of money off of selling it to Enron. Everybody walked away with, triple retirements. That's probably being kind. And then from there, Enron went bankrupt, and we all know about that. And my battery's going to go blow out on me here again. And send me a phone and send me food. You can actually send it to Peter Carver Bennett at Safeway here in Walnut Creek, California at 600 South Broadway. Just send me a ping. Let me know that I got money sitting there. I need it. I'm basically really starving. I'm starving in a Safeway store. I don't have enough money to really buy a whole lot of stuff, but I'm going to make it happen. All right, and then by Tuesday, I'll be starving. I'll be out of money, Mr. Steve Bird. You know who I am. Mr. Miller, you want to duck for cover? It's not going to happen. It's over. I'm going to bring out what I know. I'm also going to raise what my issues are with 9/11 and a virus called NIMDA. And I'm going to freely admit how I tied it together, McAfee Software and Microsoft. Did you guys hear that? That maybe we were set up on 9/11? Okay. So maybe the global economy was going to collapse sometime in 2001 because George Bush didn't like the fact that we were going to possibly go to, Iraq was going to possibly turn oil into the new standard. Can you imagine that? Trading oil for, well, let's be nice to Post Company. They're actually a good company. It's Captain Crunch. Oh my God, Captain Crunch said. Actually, my favorite show is the Smurfs, Papa Smurf. We are one. Or one little Kennedy. I think that this country needs to make some serious changes. Protecting our country is more important than protecting our return on investment. Our return on investment has turned into our nemesis, where we no longer support our citizens. Beep. And hey, listen, city. I'm going to give this as a joke. As the city of Walnut Creek, I'm I think I've hit the wall with them too. Just a little side note, but let me finish the Enron thing. So Enron was sold to Kinder Morgan, and then about 10 years later, a pipeline blew up here in Walnut Creek. Now, there's been this big debate about the maps that nobody knew they were there. Well, that's BS, because when they do the survey to partition the property, they know where the pipelines are. They know where it's at because they spend a lot of time making sure the right-of-ways are done. And then that leads into my argument about tax assessor Gus Kramer and the county clerks and all the people involved. Somebody was able to distort the historical connection or pipeline, and that crook in the pipe went around a big oak tree, and then they hit it. And the day of the inspection, from my understanding, is that the normal line rider wasn't there, and they hit the pipe and they killed 5 people. And then about 5 months later, one of my friends, or 7 months later, one of my friends had her head blown off with a little daughter. Beautiful, God, beautiful child, beautiful, 5 years old. And we had a date, and she called me up, and my sons were going to come on over, and we were going to have a picnic in the backyard. Boom, all over. Well, that pipeline, they knew where that line was, and Rick Kopp was in charge of that line as a general counsel representative of Southern Pacific from 1970 all the way until they converted the assets to Bechtel Real Estate. And then they took that money and that land and all that south of Market train yards, all of that binds together with a guy named Mayor Newsom. And Mayor Newsom signed a reward for LesterGarnier.com. And Mayor Newsom fired Alex Fagan, who was found dead in London. And Mayor Newsom knows that Lester Garnier was working for Senator Feinstein when she was Mayor Feinstein. And that's a whole bunch of other malarkey that I've uncovered in regards to Jonestown. And I actually met a military policeman from that area during that time period. And basically, I think is that I probably, and sometimes by sheer coincidence, no information, but I have my grandfather's history with Patterson, Teal, and Dennis that leads to the Bushes, leads to the Kennedys. And my grandfather's death right around the time Kennedy died, being the fact that he was an advisor, I am suspect. I lived very, very well as a kid. We used to take limos to the Waldorf Astoria, like 6 blocks. You know, we didn't take no checker crab. We took checker cab, not crab. Okay? So, you know, Mr. Miller, I'm not going away. You're the CEO of Safeway, and now I'm going to send this to Nestle USA. I think this is a Nestle product. Yeah. I don't know. Ovaltine, you sell a lot of that in Salt Lake City to the Mormons. In the Mormon area, you have a Mapleton, and you have where you have a guy named Timothy who killed his family. Roughly 5 or 6 miles south, where 5 of my family members were killed or slaughtered via drugs distributed under the guise of being certified to distribute under DEA schedules, because you're a drug store as well as a grocery store. So, you know, you got good products here. I can't say the food's gotten me sick here, but my friend Anthony Banta came through here. This is where he shopped, and he got killed by the police. Went and flipped out, you know. And, you know, this is a perfect Tylenol murders case, you know, if you want to look at it like that. I'm going to put Kinder's up here. Somebody from Kinder's with a military background started giving me some grief, and I realized that that's when I started looking harder at the military side of my story. And I've seen, I'll be honest with you, everybody, I've seen enough top secret clearances to last me a lifetime. Now, if I had a place to live, I'd be able to buy myself some A1, and it's good. I love A1. It's my, you know, a flavor that you grew up with. And you know what? I don't have a place to live, but I know Steve Bird, CEO of Safeway, and I know he personally threw me out of here. And I know he's personally connected as an executive of Southern Pacific from 1972 all the way forward to when he left for, name drawn on the blank, but it's a consulting firm. And then he got up partners with a company called KKR, and KKR is now evolved into Excel KKR. And here's the funny thing about it. Those guys bought a seat on this board at Pandora. 6 months after some of my friends at Pandora that I knew that were killed in the ghost ship fire. Music friends. Kind of a looser relationship, but you know, you get on stage, a guy says, hey, I'm the guy recording you, here's the mic, blah, 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 sing into the microphone, plug in your guitar here at ABC. That was at Hotel Utah. That was Johnny Egaz. Unfortunately, I sent a letter to somebody over there, pretty important, that they've got from 5 years ago, and the FBI can use that to basically start asking questions of Excel KKR, who, by the way, is part of the private capital that bought private equity that bought Safeway out back in 1988 when my friend was murdered, the Safeway manager. Looking kind of complicated, isn't it? So if I had money, I'd be baking cakes again, but there's not a whole lot of sugar-free stuff in here for you. I'm dying for some. Anyways, you know, this is branding, labels, right? And so I got a situation where I got a murder-suicide at an employee of Nestle that came back to the United States and was found dead with his whole family. And then I got another murder-suicide just a few miles away that are my family or my relatives. And that doesn't make any sense. And I know CEO Steve Burton, I know Rick Kopp, and those are the guys that know all about the pipeline. And when you look at Kinder Morgan, you can see the Kinder Morgan pipeline. Kinder Morgan and Safeway and Nestle all have significant investments from a guy named Larry Fink over at BlackRock. And I did a lot of work on the interlocutory directorate, which tells me how Safeway came to life, and I know a little bit about the Target data breach. I know a lot about the NIMDA virus that brought down the networks on 9/11. I was there a week late. And you know, in Building 7, when I sued Southern Pacific, everybody talks about the Enron documents lost in Southern Pacific. Okay, so a Building 7 came down, destroyed probably one of the biggest criminal cases. We have a couple of sketchy Clinton-type murders. And I know a guy named Robert Vesco who Clinton pardoned. And then I know an FBI agent, Frank Doyle Jr., that worked on the 9/11 bombing in 1993 that trained the FBI agents in the area on the bomb squad. And they were running it and using it on land owned by Louisiana Pacific. And Louisiana Pacific and Southern Pacific are separate companies, but they need each other like a flower needs the rain. Because without a train, you can't move lumber, right? Because Louisiana Pacific lumber in the mills, and then they're up there spiking that, and they kill people up in Humboldt County. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were there. And here we are in Safeway 30 years later, tying the knot. So on the Walnut Creek City Council the other day, I kind of blew them away. I spent 1 minute of my 3 minutes. And, you know, the Walnut Creek City Council, the Walnut Creek in general, you know, a lot of people are, you know, they have to follow the leadership. So at the rate I'm going, I'm going to be in a retirement home. No, I'm going to be dying on the side of the road. I'm 61 years old. It's taken its toll. I don't really look forward to the cold weather. I don't want to go sit in a chair owned by Core